Hello, I'm Jeff Allen Wolf. I give my commentary on national and world news and politics, and I think all of you will agree this is definitely a world gone mad. If you're listening to this podcast, well, guess what? You're part of the resistance, and I welcome you. Let's get right to the heart of things. Couple of quick hit stories for wrapping up the week. In economic developments, China says it's currently assessing proposals by the U.S. to begin trade talks. It comes as the exemption allowing Chinese goods to be shipped duty-free into the U.S. expired just after midnight. President Donald Trump is also calling on the Fed to lower interest rates after a better-than-expected jobs report. And on Trump cabinet changes, if you haven't read the news, Trump removed Mike Waltz as National Security Advisor, announced his nomination as UN Ambassador in the first major staff change since the president took office. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will temporarily replace him. Rubio is now the top U.S. diplomat serving in four roles at once. Here we go. The first defection or removal of someone appointed by Trump. Do you remember his first term, everyone? Do you remember how many people either were fired or left his administration? Look it up. It was a hell of a lot. I think it was like 75%, if I recall. And in the Harvard funding showdown, Trump said this morning that Harvard University will be stripped of its tax-exempt status, redoubling his threat as a broader chess match is underway over free speech, political ideology, and federal funding at the Ivy League school. And the destruction of free speech in our country continues. Students cannot exercise the right to protest. Trump doesn't want anyone against him. And if they are, there will be consequences. White House budget proposal calls for sweeping cuts in education, environmental, and health care programs. This is from CNN's Elena Trine and Kevin Liptak, who reported the White House plans to unveil its budget proposal targeting education, foreign aid, environmental, health care, and other non-defense discretionary spending with $163 billion in cuts, two administration officials told CNN. Now, the proposal referred to internally as a skinny budget because it's an outline rather than a comprehensive plan. It calls for $557 billion in non-defense discretionary spending, one of the officials said. Now, the officials said agencies that would face steep cuts include the Department of the Interior, Department of Housing and Urban Development, Department of Education, Environmental Protection Agency, National Institutes of Health, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. According to the official, the budget boosts funding for border security, air and rail safety, law enforcement, programs that benefit veterans. The budget proposal is essentially a statement of President Donald Trump's priorities to Congress, which must hammer out the details and pass them into law. Now, in his first months in office, Trump and billionaire advisor Elon Musk have sought to dramatically slash the federal government, laying off federal workers and eliminating functions that don't align with the administration's political views. The proposed cuts were first reported by the Wall Street Journal. So education, EPA, housing, health departments, all being ripped apart by Donald the Delusional. Intelligence suggests that Putin's immediate goals for Ukraine war may have shifted. New intelligence reviewed by U.S. and Western officials suggests Russian President Putin may have shifted his immediate focus in the Ukraine war toward the shorter-term objectives of solidifying his hold on territory his forces have seized and boosting his country's struggling economy, multiple people familiar with the matter told CNN. Now, this represents an evolution from recent U.S. and Western intelligence assessments suggesting that Putin felt the state of the war was to his advantage, that he had the momentum as well as the manpower to sustain a longer fight against a faltering Ukraine and seize the whole country. The perception Putin may have shifted his thinking has played into President Donald Trump and his negotiators' belief that the Russian president may be more willing to consider a potential peace deal than in the past. Two U.S. sources familiar with the matter told CNN. Now, however, senior U.S. officials remain skeptical of Putin and his repeated assertions in ongoing talks that he wants a peace deal. Even though what is being proposed by the U.S. is incredibly generous to Russia, handing him, Putin, most of the territory that he's taken in this Ukraine war. There's also a widespread belief that even if Russia agrees to a version of the agreement on the table, it may look to resume the war and try to seize more of Ukraine in the long term. I think that he may be thinking, I don't want to say thinking smaller, but thinking about what a reasonable nearer-term objective is, said a senior Western intelligence official. The pressure exerted by an increasingly angry Trump and his administration, threatening more sanctions and a struggling Russian economy, have Putin in a potentially difficult position. There has also been strong emphasis in talks on the potential for investments between the U.S. and Russia if the war ends, opportunities the U.S. has called historic. All of this really depends on what is the U.S. willing to put on the table so that he could not just claim victory domestically, the official continued, but really feel that he has achieved something that is worth a significant pause and then maybe retake up, the fight against Ukraine later on. Now, the official pointed to Putin's repeated references to where the Russian people have historically come from, said he maintains a long-term objective to seize more of Ukraine, at least those portions that are the cradle of Russian civilization in Putin's eyes. Moscow is willing to play along with the U.S., restrict its immediate objectives to improve its relationship with Washington, a senior European official agreed, but clearly hasn't given up on the maximalist war ends. The Kremlin hopes that a better relationship draws the attention away after a tactical pause, and that they can then use the mix of military, economic, informational, and political tools to achieve Putin's full objectives in Ukraine and beyond, the official said. Earlier this year, U.S. intelligence officials cautioned now senior Trump advisors that controlling Ukraine remained Putin's top priority next to regime survival, and warned that he was eager to exploit any perceived rush to negotiations by the new administration, according to a source familiar with those conversations. Putin's thinking has evolved because he thinks he has a sympathetic U.S. President in Trump who doesn't know what he's doing and is more interested in short-term wins, said Democratic Congressman Jason Crow, who sits on the House Intelligence Committee. Putin, he added, thinks there can be a settlement and it simply just won't be enforced. Ukraine is pleading for security assistance. During negotiations that started under Trump, Ukraine's leaders have repeatedly pleaded that the U.S. and Europe provide security assistance and guarantees as part of a potential pact so that even if Ukraine does cede some land, Russia would be deterred from resuming the war to seize more of the country. The Russian objective is to get as much territory recognized as possible and have as weak of a Ukraine as possible, said a senior U.S. official who argued there's zero indication Putin could actually conquer the rest of Ukraine when his forces have been unable to dramatically move the front lines in a long time. So any shift in Putin's thinking comes from that realization and the Trump administration's efforts to get the two sides to negotiate an end to the conflict, said the official. The calculation of what more Putin could achieve at this given stage has probably changed, in part because there's a desire to end the war, the official said. The calculus on the U.S. side has basically changed since the Biden administration, which contributes to the changing calculus of the Russians, presumably. Now, discussions about where territorial lines could be drawn have focused on the 5 territories where Russia has the strongest foothold, including Crimea, which Putin seized in 2014. Trump has said Ukraine will not get back most of the land it has lost to Russia. Last week, Vice President J.D. Vance indicated the U.S. envisions an eventual truce somewhere close to where the current front lines are, with some territorial swaps. This peace deal is about these so-called 5 territories, but there's so much more to advance. Who has met with Putin 4 times this year, told Fox News after his 3rd encounter. I think we might be on the verge of something that would be very important for the world at large. Now, CNN has reported that some European allies are highly alarmed by the framework being proposed, as the U.S. could recognize territory illegally seized by Russia. Trump has said the U.S. is ready to recognize Russian sovereignty in Crimea, while Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said this week that Moscow wants international recognition of all 5 Ukrainian territories Russia fully or partially holds, something Kiev has said it would refuse to do. Another senior U.S. official, Ukraine envoy Keith Kellogg, said Tuesday that the administration is just waiting on Russia to agree to a ceasefire. We've got one side, Ukraine. Now you need to come up with the other side. And I think we're close, he told Fox News. This is the last 100 yards to an objective in the military. It's the toughest 100 yards. Trump stated maybe he doesn't want to stop the war, meaning Putin. He's just tapping me along. Has to be dealt with differently through banking or secondary sanctions. Trump wrote in a post on Truth Social following a meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky while at the Vatican. Look, this of course is pure stall tactics by Putin. He has no intention of ending the war and losing out on more territory. He's playing Donald Trump. I've said this multiple times during my podcast. And there's incredible naivete and lack of knowledge about real-world situations with Donald and his negotiating team. This is going to cause major damage to Ukraine and potentially the rest of Europe when Putin gets away with stuff and is rewarded with territory and power plants, etc., for starting this war instead of being punished. Listeners, you know how to reach me. Through phone number, email, Blue Sky. If you have any comments on this or anything at all on my podcast, I hope to hear from you. And finally, stepping away from the negative stories, the things we can't control, I'll share this uplifting story with you. This is from the Good News Network, used with their permission. In the ancient English region of Cumbria, a woman discovered to her great surprise that Leonardo, her pet tortoise, had fled her house in Ulverston. Rachel Etches will occasionally allow Leonardo the tortoise, to wander around the garden lawn to his great enjoyment. Now, despite being far from a sprinter, it only took 1 lapse of concentration for one such play date to go terribly awry. Escaping, Leonardo began, get this, a 9-month trip for a tortoise around town right as winter was approaching. Etches set up a social media campaign to try and recruit help in locating a reptile before the temperatures plummeted and the cold-blooded creature froze. But after the spring thaw, a dog walker noticed Leonardo the tortoise, him ambling down the street, proving him capable of facing the North English winter, of finding food, and avoiding predators like rowdy shepherd dogs. He's gone on his travels around our little hamlet, and he was found about a mile from our house. It was totally my fault, she said. We were out in the garden. We just had our 2nd child. I got a bit distracted, and Leonardo just wandered off out of our sight, Etches told the BBC. He's led a very comfortable life for 13 years under a heat lamp in my house, so we didn't think he was going to survive the winter being out for the first time. Leonardo the tortoise, back safely at home. And that reminded me the reason why I wanted to share this story with you. I had a pet box turtle when I was very, 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 very young. His name was Paladin. He was named after the main character in the television show starring Richard Boone. Show was called Have Gun, Will Travel. Well, unfortunately for me, Paladin vanished from our backyard one day, and I never found him. I'll be back again Monday. Everyone have a great weekend. This is A World Gone Mad. I'm Jeff Allen Wolf, and without your comments, your feedback, your engagement, I'm sitting in a room talking to myself. Please send me your comments. I hate talking to myself. Stay hopeful.